Welcome everybody to the NVIDIA Omniverse live stream. It's a pleasure to have you with us today. This is a very exciting hour we're going to have with some veterans from NVIDIA. We're diving into OpenUSD. Aaron Luke is in the wings along with Jen Baruki. We're going to be exploring the real-world impact of adopting OpenUSD. You're going to hear some great stories, firsthand experiences, including challenges and successes, and discover why investing in OpenUSD can transform your development projects. Please feel free to join us, ask your questions and comments in the chat. We will be watching those like a hawk along with our producer, Amelia, and sharing resources throughout the live stream. Before we get started, a couple of quick announcements. We are very happy to share that the free and paid Omniverse and OpenUSD training offerings are now available online. Most of this is free, actually, so great resource. Amelia will post a link in the chat. Some of this content is from GTC, and some of it is stand alone from GTC apart. So feel free to check that out and let us know if you have any questions. You can always jump onto the Omniverse Discord if you have problems finding anything. That's discord.gg/NVIDIA Omniverse. Robots is all the rage right now, of course. Robotic factories supercharge industrial digitalization as electronic makers adopt NVIDIA AI and Omniverse. There's a great blog story on this. On a related note, if you caught last week's live stream, you saw a great group of graduate students and one undergrad student, along with the director of the COMET program, which is part of NJII Innovation Center, which is also part of NJIT. They showed you how they leverage Arduino, OpenUSD, Isaac, Python for their robotic arm. We'll probably show a little quick clip from that a little later, but check out that blog for more information there. This also is another article we're going to be sharing in the comments posted. So this is about NVIDIA robotics being adopted by industry leaders for AI-powered autonomous machines. Again, we've seen a lot of activity, not only on the forums, but on the Discord on these areas. So if you're a new member of the Discord, make sure you check the channels. We have specific channels for different things, including for Isaac as relates to robotics. If you're not sure what channel to go to, just post in general questions. Foxconn trains robots, streamlines assembly with NVIDIA AI and Omniverse. Amelia's going to post a link for this great article as well. As you can see, there's just a never-ending information coming out every week. These are all new articles just posted in the last several days. Please check these out and let us know if you have any questions or comments on them. If you need help from someone from NVIDIA, the official forums are the best place to go for technical support, and Discord if you want to chat with other users. But get in touch with me if you need help. Get in touch with a specific developer. If you're a company interested in leveraging NVIDIA technology, also check out the NVIDIA Inception program for startups. And then we had a recent live stream with SoftServe and Continental, and we have a corresponding blog post on this as well. So I would check out both. The live stream was a lot of fun, and the blog post does a deep dive into their work in collaboration in design and development for their factory. So really cool project to show and tell there. And we are going to now bring in our special guest. Let me start with Jennifer. Hey, Jen.
Morning.
And Aaron Luke. Hello, Aaron. How are you doing?
Hey, good.
Thank you both for joining the Omniverse live stream today. This is a big pleasure. First of all, for a couple of reasons. One, Jennifer is a veteran live streamer, and she was very active along with Aaron at GTC, in charge of leading different sessions there. And Aaron, you gave a great talk on OpenUSD. You had a great interview with Rafi. We'll post those links in the chat. So we thought it would be a great idea to kind of bring in your great minds together and kind of go over just a high-level overview and somewhat of a deeper dive into what is OpenUSD. Why do people need to be attention of it? Why are people all talking about it right now? Why are all these companies jumping to adopt it? On the recent live streams, we've had some great guests, like I said a minute ago, with SoftServe and Continental, where interoperability was a big part of the selling point of OpenUSD. So I would like to dive into all that and more. Why don't we start kind of giving a definition of kind of what OpenUSD? I know it's some people call it a file format, but it's kind of much deeper than that. Aaron, do you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. I think what I'll do is I'll give like a very abbreviated version of my GTC talk, which covers that, and then that'll also tee up Jen and me to sort of talk a little bit more about our own journeys of how we got into this and where we think we're going from here.
That's perfect. Okay, so let's start things off more on an official note with you guys both doing your introductions and kind of
Oh yeah, sure.
telling
Yeah.
everybody kind of what your role is at NVIDIA and what you're focusing on and a little bit of your background. So, so Jen's next to me. Go ahead, Jen.
All right, I'm Jen. I'm part of the tech marketing engineering team. So we try to, bring a much awareness and help everybody kind of get started and really adopting, Omniverse, OpenUSD, everything in between. So that's kind of what we do. Hopefully, you'll see more of me in the near future. For some of those stuff, but yeah, we're making some really cool things. We're cooking in the kitchen in the background, so please stay tuned for that.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool resources coming up from Jen, Ashley, and the team. So super excited to share those in the coming weeks and months. Okay, Aaron, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. I'm the lead product manager for the USD ecosystem in NVIDIA. And so that mission is to really promote and advance USD as the data ecosystem for virtual worlds. And in particular, all that data that can be honored from external and existing data sources can be accelerated by developers in Omniverse to do the kind of simulations and rendering and all that real world to virtual world translation and augmentation through accelerated computing with NVIDIA technology. So that's, and before that, I was working at Pixar for 8 years and was one of the original developers on USD, and particularly deployed it in a real production pipeline for the first time in Finding Dory.
Amazing. Well, really, really fortunate to have you here, especially today. For those who were not able to make the GTC and catch your talk, Aaron has prepared some of those slides, as you just mentioned a second ago. And this is kind of how we can get the party started and dive into why OpenUSD is a game changer for developers. So do you want to take it from here, Aaron?
Yeah, sure. So like I was saying, the log line for OpenUSD here is that it's the data ecosystem for simulating worlds, right? And we have 3 types of worlds that it's being used on a lot now. The first one, you wouldn't typically think of it as a world with this car here, but as you can vary all sorts of data inputs with USD and even branch the scene graph at various different decision points, you can have these really rich product configuration experiences for this car. And so this car is a world into itself with all the variations that it could do for all its colors and all of its interiors and things like that. And so we're seeing a lot of interest in USD in the e-commerce space for cases like that. In the middle is kind of like the really exciting avenues for USD with industrial digitalization, really building upon the trends of the past decade plus for digital twins and how to get all of that industrial data really talking to each other. You're gonna hear a lot more from Jen and me about how USD really opens up how you think about data and not just breaking down data solves, but really getting heterogeneous data talking to each other. You can get all sorts of data that aren't in the same format, kind of communicating with each other and really fleshing out all of these aspects of the physical world into the virtual world, which is really key for the kind of workflows that are driving industry right now in warehouses, factories, robotics, and so on. And then, of course, we have the classical case for USD on the far right, the Creative Cloud, right? Where this is where USD's origins at Pixar are multi-departmental workflows with dozens of super talented creators, all collaborating with each other on the same scene, but being able to sort of work in their own spaces and always see their working context alongside what the other departments are doing in traditional filmmaking and so on. We're starting to see that sort of also spill over into game development and other media and entertainment experiences. So yeah, lots of exciting stuff there.
Very cool.
So when we talk about the ecosystem here, right, it's kind of pulling double duty, right? I talked about the data ecosystem in which lots of different data can be assembled together in USD to make up this, composite worlds, such as this factory and assembly line on the left side. And also I'm talking about the stakeholder ecosystem that's all kind of being brought under this umbrella of the Alliance for OpenUSD, right? More and more vendors are making tools and applications that speak USD, can export their content to USD or otherwise map their data to USD, and really have that nice data interoperability where you can work in one tool and also have all your work in that tool show up in another tool where you could do different type of workflows, and each tool can really shine at what it's really best to do at, but also still flesh out that whole tooling and application ecosystem where all your data is contributing to this larger whole. So again, to review the unique features of USD that kind of make this all possible, right? The composition engine is really the key workhorse here that allows you to compose different types of data on top of each other and get this, sparse, non-destructive scene aggregation, in which, like I said, with the creative classical use cases, all these departments are all working on top of each other, but no one is actually literally physically stomping each other's work. Everyone's work is still somewhere in the source stack and can be lofted up and down accordingly. Custom schemas are a way in which you can add bespoke data models to USD, but not just bespoke data models, but existing data models. And this is how you can really map existing formats to USD, right, by using schemas as this common data model. Classically, this is already being done for geometry, right, in which most 3D formats agree on what a mesh is, and that's why meshes can travel throughout the 3D pipeline fairly easily. Materials is getting really interesting there with Material X and so on and so forth. So, and more of the real world can then be described in these common data models and then travel through USD regardless of the source provenance of that data, and everyone's data is still preserved that way and just speaking USD through the pipeline. Asset resolvers and data abstractions are how you can abstract away where that data is actually located and stored, which is also key as well. That's how you can easily integrate USD in the cloud, so on and so forth. And finally, Hydra is a way to hook to feed all that data into post-processing for things like rendering and other simulations. So, like I said, with the schemas and things like that, a really key exercise for a lot of stakeholders now is what I'm calling conceptual data mapping. In particular, this is happening very concretely with how AOUSD has liaison relationships with other open governance bodies, particularly and community outlets. So particularly the Academy Software Foundation, which is where Material X is being maintained, and Kronos, where GLTF is being maintained. And so some active development here are like, authoring these effectively cross specifications between how do you map your Material X data to USD and USD shade, how do you map USD data to GLTF and GLTF to USD, and so on and so forth, so that all of these beautiful interchange technologies have a really nice way to talk to each other. And this is an exercise that's I think is going to be very common in USD. So particular in the industrial space, there are efforts underway now with Siemens to map JT to USD. So this is their Jupyter tessellation format, which is really great for a lot of CAD interchange in industrial pipelines, right? And so there's a great effort here to sort of continue growing that JT ecosystem through OpenUSD. So like I said, all that JT data can still be preserved and speak USD natively via common data modeling, right? And one of the first forays there is a Siemens effort in collaboration with us at NVIDIA for a schema to speak BREPs. So like, sort of the first foray into getting solid models into USD and being able to travel that whole pipeline. As I mentioned earlier, this is an effort that Siemens will be championing in the AOUSD as part of the geometry working group that has just been started up. So this is where things really get interesting, right? And this is where, as I started learning more about the industrial spaces, right, thinking about really starting to think about 3D in a different way and thinking about like just how it affects the data that we interact with in our daily lives, right? So one thing I want folks to take away from this session today is like 3D is a great entry point into USD, and I think a lot of it, the mechanics of USD, it helps to know C++ and Python and things like that. But I think conceptually, you can really step back and really zoom out a bit further and just think about how data affects you in your daily life. One example that I can think of from my daily life is like navigation apps have really changed how I operate. Right, I'm old enough where I used to actually break out physical maps and use compasses to map out how long it would take from get to A to B and things and so on and so forth. And now it's all super well integrated. I don't have to think about it. I just type in where I want to go. But and I've seen this request in other sort of navigation communities, is I really don't like making unprotected left turns. Right, I see lots of accidents in there, and it's just like you never know you can never quite tell how fast the opposing traffic is coming in. So I really wish my navigation app had the option to configure to say, like, I don't want to make any unprotected left turns, right? And USD is not necessarily the answer to this, but it's a way of thinking about it. Remember what I said about how you can aggregate different heterogeneous data sources together, right? So the existing map data doesn't have like all the intersections that have unprotected left turns into it. But you can imagine sort of like, for the routes that you drive, marking it for yourself, putting it like in a database or a spreadsheet or whatever, and using USD to then effectively augment the navigation app to effectively implement this feature yourself, right? And again, like these are not things that exist right away right now, but it's a way of thinking about data that I think USD really unlocks, where it's like you can add your own custom data model on top of existing standards, and then really and then prove it out, right? Like you can prove it out with your own life in sort of adding features to apps that you use, and then going from there, engaging with the community and seeing if it makes sense to add unprotected left turns to the standards for navigation, things like that. That's like me in my fantasy world, but it's like I think like that because of how USD is really sort of ingrained in me now to like how to really think about how data surrounds us in the world and how we can correlate different types of data that aren't normally correlated. And this is what I get into when I talk about the phased evolution of USD here. And these are the kind of phases I talk about, right? So, and there are three areas, right? The first one is schemas, so data models, right? So that's the can I add unprotected left turns to it, right? And then the middle row is the runtime, right? What are the behaviors, right? The behaviors are when I'm driving and I have avoid unprotected left turns on, the routing takes that into account and sends me down some extra blocks or has me take extra right turns, what have you, right? So that's a behavior that's associated with that new data, right? And then on the bottom is the content, right? So the maps. Do the maps already have this data that have unprotected left turns in them or not? And if they don't, right, can they be updated to add that data and so on and so forth? And then you iterate accordingly. Maybe the way you decided to represent unprotected left turns is not sufficient enough for certain types of intersections, and you need to update the schema accordingly, update the runtime accordingly, and then update the content accordingly as well. So even though USD has this term universal in it, it's always evolving, right? Which means that similarly to when you're like updating a game that is massively multiplayer and live all the time, you do have to be able to update the game content and runtime. And similarly with USD and digital twins, as USD is evolving, you will need to update content accordingly and even sunset legacy content in order to keep the runtime performed, things like that. So these are really things to keep in mind when you're working with USD and particularly thinking about adding new things to USD. So, and another thing that Jen and I are going to talk about is the importance of asset structuring for your content in USD, and the 4 principles that we hit there: legibility, where it's like you can correlate the USD back to its original source. This is particularly interesting, like I said, for CAD data, where we need to add new schemas to be able to do that. Modularity is being able to reuse content in USD. So with composition, you can reference existing assets, and you can assemble your scenes based off of existing content, such that every robot in the scene is basically the same robot that is just in different positions in your factory, and so on and so forth. Performance, there's many ways to get better performance out of your scene so that it scales accordingly. But I think you can really use first principles of data engineering there. It's the same as making sure that like every entry in your database really is really important, and every table has meaning, and so on and so forth. So that the amount of hops that you're making for your queries are streamlined. And finally, navigability. Like, you should be able to find what you're looking for both visually in the scene, and also sort of in the hierarchy of objects in the scene. The hierarchy itself should be organized in a way where you can jump around and find things that you're looking for. And mechanism for this that will Jen and I can talk a little bit more about too is the model hierarchy, in which like you have a nice table of contents for your scene that you can look at even if you have all your content unloaded via the USD mechanism called payloads. You still have this sort of nice high-level view of, okay, what are the objects in the scene, and maybe you can even draw bounding boxes for them in your viewport, things like that. So to recap, right, these are the four pillars that I think are driving USD right now. One is the common data modeling, mapping all data sources to be able to speak USD. Having phased evolution to be able to add new features and new data models to USD to continue filling the gap between what's in the physical world and what is representable and simulatable in virtual worlds. Asset structuring is a big pillar here. It's in order to have content that's comprehensible both by humans and by AIs. I think the AIs are going to have a big role to play in terms of how we scale to the types of creation and simulation that needs to happen within virtual worlds. And all of this is happening, like I said, under the open umbrella of open governance of bodies like AOUSD, such that everything is standardized, and we can be sure that the data models that we've agreed upon on the left are honored by every application, every pipeline that speaks USD. So that's the basic intro.
That's pretty awesome. So you say so many different points there, and I know for some people out there, they're just learning about OpenUSD. It can seem a little overwhelming, right? And so the next big question we want to tackle is, how do you get started if you want to actually start to leverage some of this? And it's worth noting that, as I think you alluded to earlier, you don't have to take everything in, right? You could use the pieces that you need. We heard this a lot actually at GTC when a lot of people came and wanted to leverage OpenUSD and Omniverse, and like, wow, how do I get started? And I don't have unlimited data all for everything in our environment or application available. But the thing is, you just use it for what you need it for, and you could progress up as you can. While we're talking, I also want to remind everybody that this is a live stream, and you can ask your comments and your questions. You have the best experts here, I think, for OpenUSD joining us live. So feel free to ask your questions. I see a lot of nice interest in people relate to your left turn concerns, Aaron. I see a couple people mention that. But yeah, so let's talk about how would you get started? Like, if you're a developer, whether you're small or large, what would be the first steps, and what kind of resources are available for folks?
Ooh, I feel like there's a little bit more resources than when I was starting to learn USD, for sure. There's been stuff that even our team has made internally for teaching content that we've done at SIGGRAPH and GTCs, and we're going to still try pushing those as well to make sure that people have a good grasp of how to use USD. It can be a bit scary, I think, to get into it. So there's a lot of things you can do. Like, if you're too scared to kind of just dive in and kind of like mess around with it. Like, some people like to go in and they like to poke around. I like to poke around a little bit, but then you might get like stuck a little bit here and there. There are some small little written tutorials if you want to get into like a little bit more on the development side on the OpenUSD website. We also have one if you're more of like a 3D practitioner kind of stuff. We have one DLI that we did at GTC back in March, which was getting started with USD and collaborative workflows. So that one's really cool. But yeah, I mean, it getting started, it is tough. So I would say if you can start either with small snippets and then you go in, then I think once you are in there, it's much easier to kind of like build up that experience.
We see great comments from developers out there watching. A couple hundred people watching now, which is great. So welcome everybody. What's on the screen right now is from Data Juggler, member of the community. The biggest thing that helped me learn USD was the commands extension. Do you want to tell everybody what that is?
So the commands extension is a sample extension inside of Omniverse, inside the Omniverse sample apps. And that essentially allows you to, without having to write USD, especially if you're not too familiar with it at first and you're not sure how things interact, you're able to actually use and run these commands. Now, what's really cool about the commands extension too is that you can actually copy the code that runs a particular snippet, and you can add it into your own extension or your own Python script to then manipulate the stage. So that's pretty cool.
That's great. And let's a couple other comments here. Tutorials and documents are just so much better than they were when I started. So I'm guessing that was probably a year or two ago. It does seem like the international global pace of OpenUSD development has really taken a big turn in the last year or so. There are probably many reasons for that, but I would think what we mentioned earlier about interoperability and people who typically have had a very siloed workflow with their different apps that are working for their projects or their companies that usually have very proprietary data, different steps, and being able to manage that was difficult. And this actually saves a lot of time and headache and keeps the data more pure. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think so. Jen, I'm curious. What was the second 3D DCC that you learned? And I think you see where I'm going with this, right? Where like I think as 3D professionals, we're always learning new tools. So I'm wondering, like I certainly have my own experiences, but I was curious about yours, and I think there's something about learning your second tool that then kind of conditions you to be able to do things like learn USD, where everything is abstracted away.
Oh yeah, I would say my second one, and I think some people might not believe it, is 3ds Max, because my first one was Maya, right? So I was very invested in Maya, and then when I was working at my previous company, I had to learn some 3ds Max. I didn't get too far deep into it, but it was a big learning curve for me to go between the two applications. And that's mostly because a lot of the stuff that the company had, the legacy stuff, was in 3ds Max. So you couldn't, it wasn't an easy solution to port everything over and to like Maya. Like you would have to be starting from scratch. So that was...
Yeah, I went through the same thing in reverse. I learned the whole pipeline in Max first as like my first real DCC that I learned, right? So I learned how to model and do a little bit of rigging and animating and lighting and like, making, full short movies with Max. And then 6 months later, a total pivot, you have to learn Maya now, right? And I remember all the frustrations of like, but I already know how to do all this stuff, and I have to learn all. Like it does kind of feel like you're like you have to learn everything all over again. But I think once you've done that twice, all right, then you're like, okay, like the physical act of what I'm doing is different, but like you look for the commonalities in the workflows, right? And you context switch accordingly. Like sometimes even like when I was writing more code, like I would deliberately only code in Emacs and not use like more like fancier IDEs to just because just to be like, oh, I might not always have those. So or even just doing, raw text editing of code, just in case, I didn't want to get into the habit of relying on fancy code completion and things like that. But I think going through those type of experiences really sort of hardens you to learn USD, where you're gonna have similar frustrations of but I thought I already knew 3D, and USD is doing it a little bit differently and things like that. But I think if you harden yourself for that sort of expansion of your understanding rather than replacing your existing understanding, I think you're well positioned to sort of dive in.
Yeah, it was definitely not a comfort. I definitely needed a lot of hand holding. I don't know about you, but that was I had maybe 3 artists that would all help me. And they would all tell me something different, and I'm like, oh, okay. So
yeah,
that was always fun.
Yeah.
You know what's amazing too here? So we have these experts here that are the panelists, Aaron and Jen, but we also have experts in the community that are actually watching. And if you look at everyone's on the YouTube chat, there's some great help and advice being given out by some of the veterans of OpenUSD, developers on the Omniverse platform, including I see Omniverse ambassador from the community, Eric Kraft is here from Meet and Hunt.
Mm-hmm.
So Eric, it's great advice. Find a tool and code and something like Blender and recreate it in Omniverse. It's a great way to get started. And I think let me see, we have lots of people asking questions about what Nandu is here also. Nandu actually does a really compelling weekly USD study course on the Discord server with members of the community. And he said in the chat that the Discord server has been a great source of references and resources. So there's a lot out there, and like I said a little earlier, I know it can seem a little overwhelming, but I think advice we're hearing in the panel discussion in the chat here is, start small, and then and then ask questions. Lots of people here, as you can see, ready to help. Not even during the live stream, but afterwards on Discord server. Lots of people jump in to help.
Yeah, and I could give a quick tip for the developer personas who want to learn a little bit more USD sort of in the trenches. There's a really cool feature in USD View called debug flags. All right, where you can turn on different debug channels and to find out exactly what USD is doing when you do certain operations. In Composer, we have the same feature. It's an extension called USD debug, all one word. You'll need to launch Composer from a terminal rather than launcher to see the output. But if you like getting into the weeds of that kind of that's even as someone who's dealt with USD for a long time, that's often what I do to sort of answer for myself what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. And Nandu actually just gave a little more detail here in the study group. If anyone wants to go and participate, come and share your problems, challenges, or what you're working on in OpenUSD in our Tuesday evening, 5 p.m. Eastern calls. If you go to our Discord server, discord.gg/NVIDIA Omniverse, you'll see this study group session listed as one of the events in the top left. If you have a problem, just post about it in general. We'll help you. But thanks, Nandu. Nandu is actually going to be joining the stream on June 26th, actually. We haven't even put this on our calendar yet officially, but he'll be there.
Spoilers.
Yeah, big spoiler. So it's going to be a really, really fun one. You're going to say something, Jen?
Yeah, I was going to say that sometimes I pop in every once in a while to say hi. Everybody's always got some interesting questions. And, Nandu has been doing a lot of amazing work with facilitating some of this stuff and really engaging some of the community members. There's some people who've been there for a really long time. I know Zia shows up a lot, and there's some new members that we see every once in a while that are sharing their struggles and stuff. And I think that's a really good way to kind of really find help, because you might not be the only one. I'm sure that there's other people that want to help, and obviously I want to help too, and I try to come on as often, but I'm a little bit more of a once in a blue moon. If I get a moment that's not ingrained in looking at something in OpenUSD that I'm doing on my side, and then I'll look at the clock and be like, oh no, I missed it. So sometimes I forget.
For sure. And I'm yeah, I generally don't have the cycles to participate in those, which is why it was such a treat to be able to be a little bit of TA at the DLIs at GTC
Mhm.
with you in March, Jen. Like, yeah, like, we could talk a little bit about that. Where for a lot of this is like Jen and I kind of learning from all of the community, like about their struggles too, because everyone struggles in a different way. So like it's very useful for us to be on the ground, like seeing firsthand what folks are going through, and especially being able to do that in the same room in the lab, right? And certainly not asynchronously over chat or even with screen share, but being able to actually like be side by side and be like, oh, okay, well, let me seeing what they're trying to do and then just showing them, okay, well, here's another way to do it. Does that make sense? Like, yeah, I really miss that.
Mhm. Yeah, there's always I think the biggest question I usually end up getting is how they can pull their information or data into USD. And there's various different ways that you can do that. There's no like concrete answer or solution. But then I get the question that follows up from that is like, well, why USD? Why should I use it compared to OBJ or FBX and stuff like that? And I think it's not seeing the non-destructive aspects of USD and the collaborative use cases that you can have with it. It's just phenomenal once you start to learn it, because like, yeah, you could see a layer and be like, okay, this is my USD file. But when you start getting into more complex stuff like scaling out your asset, going into composition arcs, seeing that, oh, I don't need to remake the same asset 5 different times. I can make different subcomponents of that asset to then make a larger component that all those other smaller subcomponents can also then be used in different like assemblies and stuff. But getting to that point and understanding it, I think is quite a struggle for some people to do that. And what I'm trying to do is help bridge that gap to understand that, hey, this stuff already. You guys know 3D good and well. Let me show you how you can like really understand composition and how you can actually aggregate your assets and structuring them properly. That's what I was getting. I don't know what some of the questions you received, Aaron, because I know that we always ended up on the other side of the room at one point.
Yeah,
like one time we were like here, and then all of a sudden we were like on the other sides having full blown conversations with people.
Yeah, I think similarly, the challenges were about different types of aggregation, right? Like when would you use sublayers versus references and things like that. And it's so much easier to explain that like when you're doing it hands-on and like you can actually see, oh, okay, like you can't you can reference the same thing in multiple times, but you can't really sublayer in the same thing multiple times. And why is that? Things like that. I think your point about getting data into USD is a good one too. We definitely need to, and that's why I talked about the common data modeling and things like that. But we need to make lower the barrier to entry there because, because you haven't even gotten to the fun stuff of aggregation at that point, right? And it's easy to write code that does that operation slowly. Like the operation of, for example, taking an existing large scene and like going through each of its meshes and running that to USD. It's easy to write code that is slow to do that. So we need to make that part of it much more painless, so that people can focus on now that I have my USD, I can like kind of like mix and match and do really exercise its superpowers rather than tripping over the nitty gritty of, okay, I need to write this mesh, and I need to write, and I need to make sure that the stage isn't recomposing every time I add a new mesh in, because I don't care about it until all the meshes have been added, and so on and so forth, right? There's a reason why it's hard, but we need to do a better job of like really steering people away from those road bumps.
Mm-hmm.
We got a great comment here from Eric Kraft. My favorite part of USD and Omniverse is that it is the native format and the interchange format, limiting the duplication of data. Eric, as mentioned earlier, is in the AECO field. So I could see the amounts of data is significant. So that makes a lot of sense. What along those lines, what do you think the biggest misconception is of OpenUSD? We talked a little bit about this in the warm up, but what do you guys hear often that is just not so accurate?
The biggest one is that folks that think that USD is trying to replace like some other format, and I think a lot of that stems from because there hasn't really been anything like USD. Everything that has been like USD before was trying to replace some other format, so they think that that's what USD is trying to do, and it's not, right. USD has abstracted away so many aspects of traditional file formats. Like it's not even tied to specific serialization. Right, and that's why I think this data mapping exercise is so important for everyone who is invested in an existing data ecosystem to be able to expand that data ecosystem to speak USD and reap all the benefits from then being able to speak to simulators that speak USD and to renderers that speak USD and so on and so forth.
That's a great point. And on somewhat related note, there was a question in the chat from Nandu about a application we announced in testing right now, Chat USD. We have nothing to announce right now about the release date, but we can tell you that it's in very advanced testing. I know a lot of developers at NVIDIA have been working on it and testing it and fooling around with it and posting their feedback. So I think people are going to love it. So just stay tuned. It won't be too much longer, I don't think. But yeah, I think great for all the other comments coming in the chat. I got a question a lot from GTC, and that's where's Aaron and where's Jen? So I'm glad you guys were there. GTC is never too far away, so everybody should definitely. If you go to nvidia.com/GTC, you'll always see like kind of GTC information and what's coming next. The team will actually be very involved in SIGGRAPH, which is coming up. So I hope everybody who can make it to SIGGRAPH is able to come. We'll definitely be trying to share as much information in real time as possible, just as we did during GTC. But yeah, that's another great place to kind of talk to other developers leveraging OpenUSD. Okay, so what else we got here? Let me see. Do you want to go through about how to really get started yourself in terms of like, okay, I'm ready to dive in. They've made a great case for why this is important to learn, and like what would be a good first step. We talked about some of the resources available. Jen and team are actually working on new resources and updating resources and documentation. So that will be coming up soon. But if people are so inspired right now, what would they do to kind of get started first?
Well, I mean, if they want to wait a week, we have a whole Learn With Me.
Who's hosting that? I can't remember.
Oh, it's Edmar, of course.
No, it's you. It's you. I'm not the host. I just stand by and help a little bit. Jen, so you'll be hosting a Learn With Me next week, which is awesome.
I will, and it's going to be really small snack bite sizes on how you can start developing within USD and showing you what some of those best practices are. But that's also kind of giving you guys a sneak peek into some of the stuff that we are cooking behind the scenes. So I would definitely highly recommend coming just to dip your feet into the water, just get a good thing, and maybe I can actually finally get Edmar to do some type of Python coding in a live stream.
Let's do it. I'm going to post the ad event link. So if you want to add this live stream next week to your calendar, there it is. This is a live stream to Learn With Me next week, hosted by Jen, and we'll get to experience some magic together. It'll be great to see you all there. Feel free again, post your questions. We are talking about why OpenUSD is a game changer for developers. Feel free to post your questions, comments, any suggestions or tips. Please share them in the chat. And it's really inspiring to see all the great people chatting right now on the live chat.
Yeah, I love that it's called Learn With Me and not Learn From Me, right? Because I think we're all on our different stages of the developer journey, and that includes me too, right? Like I would say, yeah, it's definitely cool that we do that, and I wish when I was learning these things that we had that too.
Yeah.
And there are also, go ahead, Jen.
I was going to say, like, if you wanted to get started, OpenUSD has some great docs on, some of the small tutorials that they have as well in getting started. Again, we have DLI courses that we've created that you can also go in and take a look and get started with USD. They're all nice and small, like beginner style, getting your feet wet type of courses. And Aaron's always been a big part in helping steer some of that knowledge and, getting that content out. But I think, just once you get there and once you feel a little bit more comfortable, at that point, you can start swimming in the deep end.
We've got some great.
certainly.
Amelia has been posting some of the links as we're talking, so feel free to check out Getting Started with USD for collaborative workflows. And then again, Aaron had produced a wonderful series tackling universal scene description. That is a YouTube series, and there's a link right there in the chat as well. I'm sorry, Aaron, you were about to say something.
Oh yeah, and depending on your persona, right? Like, so if you're more developer persona, right? You can even just go all the way back to basics and build OpenUSD yourself from the Pixar GitHub, right? Like give that build system a whirl, see where it's easy to use, where it's not, things like that. But once you have it up and running, then like if you're like a printf style debugger, right? In addition to the TF debug features that I mentioned earlier, you could throw in your own debug statements to really see, like, oh, do I understand what's going on? If I understand what's going on, then this print statement should be hit, or something like that. Or if you're like me, sometimes where I'm just like, I get frustrated, like, okay, well, I'm just gonna make it crash on purpose at this line just to make sure I understand what's going on, because if I understand what's going on, it should crash here, right? And so things like that, where if you want to like kind of dive into the low level things, I think that's another way in which you can kind of like carve out your own learning paths there too, and really dive into like the areas of the code that are most interesting to you.
Good point. And we had a question a minute ago about wanting to leverage Arduino. So I mentioned it really briefly at the beginning, but last week's live stream had a great project. I'll show the video so people could see it here, and I'll try to talk over it. But this team, a graduate team from NJII, the COMET program, they produced this project where they basically created a physical robot farm, 3D printed, and then leveraging Arduino and also Isaac Sim, where it was able to simulate that robot arm articulation real time. And you can see the hand there moving the arm and the simulation at the same time. So if you're interested in that, check out last week's live stream. I put that in the chat just a second ago. Great conversation with some graduate students and one soon-to-be graduate student. But that was fantastic. And then again, next week's live stream, we'll have Jen in the Learn With Me series. So that should be a lot of fun. As we had a question in the chat about what is DLI. DLI is the Deep Learning Institute. So if you do search for NVIDIA DLI, it'll come up right away. I think we posted some links already in the chat. But that's an amazing, nearly all free resource for people. So I would highly encourage people to check out. There's some great content available. And there's really, especially as someone mentioned earlier, that they have some downtime right now. And I think it's a great time to dive in and learn this stuff. And I do think that more and more companies are starting to look for people with experience with OpenUSD as they want to adopt it, and they don't have those internal talent with that background yet. So I think it's a great opportunity. I know,
especially since you don't have to install anything, right? There are Python Jupyter notebooks where you can dive right in. Mm-hmm. And I think I saw some questions earlier in the chat about learning Python, and I think Python is a nice kind of like common way to learn, so like to at least get hands-on with some of the USD concepts.
Yeah, you mentioned also obviously C++ and Python could be leveraged. What would be reasons for needed to go C++ route or the Python route? Obviously, C++ performance I assume is much better, but what any kind of wisdom you can give on I
mean, the current implementation of the Pixar implementation is all C++ with Python bindings, and maybe there's some additional Python convenience functions, but the core of it is C++. So especially, not just using C++ for performance, but also like if you're trying to debug performance issues, understanding how C++ operates can help a lot there too.
That's good. Good advice. Again, we have a few minutes left in the this is going by very quick, so feel free to post your questions or comments. I saw someone asked again about a date for the Chat USD. We don't have that, so we don't have a date yet, but it's coming very soon. So just sit tight, and if you're following our forums, we have an announcement area where you can look at the latest announcements, including most recently on Sunday, we posted all the Omniverse related announcements from Computex. So we'll post a link for the chat in a second, but you can follow that announcement. I'm sure that when Chat USD becomes available, we're going to have a nice announcement there. We'll also talk about it on a Discord. So if you're not a member there, I encourage you to join. Let me see if I still have this funny, very large banner. If you need to know the address, here it is. Look at that.
No, where did this come from?
I think Wendy did this way back in the day. Anyway, so you could, in case you forget the address, it's discord.gg/NVIDIA Omniverse. I would love to welcome you to the community if you're not already a member. As you can see from the chat, we have plenty of members there that are always welcome to help. Okay, so let me see. Let's go back to the questions. Here's a great question. Actually, Aaron, you're probably a great fit for. Let me see. Pixar could have kept USD internal. What was the motivation for open sourcing USD?
One of the big ones was to be able to so for I think I mentioned this in earlier talks. I didn't mention it earlier today, but USD is carved out from Pixar's entire internal software stack called Presto, which is its internal animation package, which is the result of decades of evolution of how Pixar thinks about 3D and collaborative filmmaking. And so a lot of these concepts date back to even A Bug's Life or so. And they needed ways of getting those kind of workflows into other tools that aren't maintained by Pixar. So like Pixar uses a wide range of DCCs, including Maya and Houdini, right, and USD, and they need ways of moving data in between tools, but they also want to work kind of Presto style in those other tools as well. So USD is this way of kind of embedding these Presto ways of working, these non-destructive ways of working in other tools. So that was a big motivation for open sourcing USD and really sort of like sharing what they thought was super useful with the community, and like really trying to grow that adoption so that their ways of working could also be embedded in these other tools.
It's funny. A follow-up to that question was: do you think that Pixar would have envisioned what happened today, where you see all these different industries outside of creative leveraging OpenUSD? Did that enter their mind, you think?
On the one hand, I would say no, but on the other hand, Pixar has been using these technologies for more than filmmaking for a while. So, for example, all the many Pixar-themed theme park rides in Disneyland and Disney World and so forth, those were designed and effectively simulated with the same technologies that that birthed USD. So and this is a colleague reminded me of this. In this way, Pixar has been doing digital twins for as long as anybody else, like using this technology. So yeah, maybe not automotive specifically, but certainly industrial use cases for things like theme parks. Yes, this technology has been used at Pixar for that.
And another great resource posted by Renan from the community. Linux Foundation has meetings too. Another great place to learn. So a great tip there. Thank you for that, Renan. Feel free to post any comments or questions you have in these closing minutes. So, okay, we talked kind of what OpenUSD is, what it's not. We clarified any misconceptions, and went through some slides from a great GTC presentation, and seeing a really expansive ecosystem focused on interoperability. We gave some tips on first steps and how to get started. Lots of great chat in the community about that as well. There's a Learn With Me happening next week, same time, same place with Jen. What kind of closing thoughts would you like to leave everybody in these last minutes? that you think any kind of thing that maybe any gotchas to avoid, or anything along those lines?
You got to keep going. Keep going, and I would say just try to expand outside of just one area of USD. And what I mean by that is I was always stuck in one USD file, not necessarily utilizing and experimenting with larger scenes, or trying to use sublayering, variance sets, all the different types of compositional arcs that there are. And I think once you start doing that, you start to form an intuition from that. And then that's when you can start asking some of those, those questions of like, how does this actually work?
Good point. And actually, we do have, let me see, one more comment here about the future of USD. Put it out on the screen. That's from Zia. Good question. Since we're seeing this significant steamrolling of kind of everybody kind of adopting, what does the future look like? We talked a little bit earlier about AOUSD, or the Alliance for OpenUSD, which has Autodesk and Adobe and Pixar and Apple and NVIDIA and many others. That seems like that's a good place to go to kind of keep up tabs on new members and what people are doing. But do you guys have any insight on where you think the future of OpenUSD goes?
I think as more stakeholders understand it, there's going to be more adoption. But particularly, I think there's going to be a lot of activity in that common data modeling phase that I mentioned. Like a lot of other formats are going to adopt USD in a way that really shows that their data can flow through USD rather than having USD is not this like hard stop of where this data goes. It's a river through which their data can flow. And I think once people embrace that, they'll really see that it's a full interchange technology rather than this hardened format. I'll probably be talking about that a little bit more at Augmented World Expo in a couple of weeks. I'll be on a panel with folks from Kronos, Autodesk, and Ventana, where we're going to be talking about sort of the ecosystem for 3D interchange, in which both USD and GLTF in particular are these very nice complementary technologies from there. And again, both those communities are very invested in finding common data models between those technologies, and that extends to really every form of data that's out there now too.
Very cool. Well, I can't tell you how enjoyable this hour has been with both of you. Thank you so much, and thank you to everyone out there in the community. I can't thank you enough for coming and joining the conversation. The great thing about these live streams is that they're interactive, and you get to learn and chat with people who can help. If you found this helpful to you, please like the video so other people will have a better chance of discovering it. And of course, subscribe to the channel if these live streams are helpful to you as well, so that you get notified when we ever have new ones coming out. I know that chatting with the community so much on Discord and on the forums, that we have a lot of people out there that are involved in startups. We mentioned Inception a little earlier, but that's NVIDIA Startup Program. As we close out the show, I'm going to play a quick 1-minute video, and then we'll come back and say goodbye. But for anyone who's watching as part of a startup, definitely take a look at NVIDIA Inception. There's a lot of free resources there that don't cost anything.
NVIDIA Inception is partnering with thousands of the world's most innovative companies. Startups at the forefront of AI, data science, gaming, and other breakthrough industries. NVIDIA Inception is the free program that empowers startups through every stage of their life cycle. Learn how you can fast-track your path to success with these program benefits. Accelerate your growth with credits for technical training, online forums, and expert guidance. Jumpstart your development in the cloud, on-prem, and at the edge with over 150 NVIDIA SDKs, pre-trained models, cloud credits, and preferred hardware pricing. Explore funding opportunities and introductions through the NVIDIA Inception VC Alliance, a community of investors excited to connect with you. Strengthen your startup's visibility through exclusive events, speaking opportunities, and promotional support.
NVIDIA seems to be one of the few, if only, companies building a robust startup program.
No matter what your size or funding stage, NVIDIA Inception can accelerate your growth. Join our global community of innovators today to see what's possible.
Such an amazing program. I can't speak enough. There was a great inception kind of party at GTC. I got to meet a lot of people involved in the startups, and everyone sharing stories of how helpful and impactful it's been to them. So if you got a startup or you're thinking about starting one, I think it's a great idea to check it out. We got a last minute question. So this will be the last question before we sign off from Zia. I think it's a great question. I wonder if Aaron has seen many folks using USD in real time for creating and ideation.
This is early on. This was the elevator pitch, right, for Omniverse, and I think the more common thing of that usage is actually more a single person working in multiple apps at the same time, and so they're basically playing all the roles of like set dresser and lighter and look development and things like that, all in different apps. So it's like they're collaborating with themselves, but using USD technology like in multiple tools at the same time.
Well, thank you so much again, Aaron and Jen. I look forward to next week's live stream. And Aaron, good luck with your next presentation. We're looking forward to that. And we'll see everybody on the forums and on Discord. Thanks for watching. And big thanks to Amelia, our producer, and Stephanie, who helped with the production as well of this live stream. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you found this valuable. And we'll see you all soon. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.